Hi everyone, it's me, Psych. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy to be back. Today's video, we're going to be learning from my mistakes. So, as many of you know, if you've been following along for a little bit, watching a couple videos here and there, you know that I recently just got married and also graduated college and moved into a new apartment. All of that's happened within the last month. We also did our honeymoon, so we're finally back from that. But in the process of all of that, these babies have suffered. They have suffered greatly. So today we're going to be trying to save them as best we can, do some preventative treatment, and just hopefully by the end of this you'll have learned from some of my mistakes so that you don't have plants end up like mine have as well. But before we take another step in that direction, you know what time it is. Of course, drink of the video, always. This is the Olipop Peaches and Cream, but it's like the Barbie one. And usually I don't go for this sort of thing, but like peaches and cream flavor, it's not usually my flavor of choice. But honestly, the Barbie marketing worked. So I'm gonna give it a try. I'm really curious. That's interesting. It kind of tastes like peach tea to me. But it's good. I don't hate it. Would I get it again? Probably not. Just because they have so many other good flavors. But it had Barbie on it, so I had to get it, obviously. Okay, so getting right into the heart of things, I have 3 plants today that have been some of my healthiest and biggest ones, but are kind of struggling right now, that I want to either prune or propagate or repot, etc., to try to get them back into a better shape. So we have, this is my monstera deliciosa. It is in this very small pot that it's gotten too big for, and so what happened with this one was the plant got too big for the small pot it was in, and it got very lopsided and started tipping over all the time, especially because I let it dry out too much, so the soil got really light and it tipped over and fell, and that dislodged a lot of the soil. It broke some of the leaves off, which was heartbreaking because this girl has gone through so much. She originally was planted in this pot, and then the roots rotted, and so then I took her out, propagated her, put her in this pot, and then she was doing really well, so well in fact that she got too big for the pot and started tipping over. So my negligence has cost her some new growth, which is unfortunate. And then over here we have my fiddle leaf fig that you can see I have so barbarically chopped at the top. It was 3 feet taller than this before, but truth be told, I genuinely had no choice because it wouldn't fit in my car if I left it the size it was before, so I had to cut it. But then I've let the propagation from the top half of this just sit in a bowl of water and basically die, because after I moved it to this apartment I went a month without being able to take care of it. So over here we have my arabica coffee plant. That the thing about this one is it's my most water needy plant. It needs to be watered more frequently than any of my others, and when we were traveling and in the process of moving, it just got neglected, and so there's so much dead, dry undergrowth that I think the best move here is to just cut off the healthy stuff, propagate it, and then put it back into the same pot. But yeah, so we're upgrading a pot size, we're transferring this bad boy in with the rest of the propagations to try to give it a bushier look, and then we are repotting this one, we're propagating this one. So to get started, I have some changes I want to make to this pot before we move the fiddle leaf fig into it. Okay, so like I said, this pot, the last plant it had in it was that monstera. However, the problem there was that this is a really big pot. It, like, since it curves out, it holds so much soil, and originally it only came with one hole in the middle, and so it just didn't drain very well, and the soil would stay wet for so long. And so my plan is to move this into this pot to give it some extra room and to put the propagations lower to give it kind of a bushy look. But before I do that, I am going to be taking an electric screwdriver, very fancy, a screw, and I'm going to be drilling some additional drainage holes into the bottom of this in addition to the big circular one in the middle, in hopes that things will drain out a little bit better. If you have a screwdriver, that would probably, or no, a drill, that's what I meant. If you have a drill, that would probably work better than this. However, this is the best I have, so I'm gonna do that really quick on a time lapse, and then I will show you what we're rocking with when it's done. Okay, so as you can see, there's the big hole in the middle right there, and then I went ahead and screwed in 4 extra holes on this layer, but then as you can see, it kind of, this is an indent and it goes back out, so to keep there from being pooling on this outer layer, I also added some extra holes here. And the way I did that, as you saw in that time lapse, was just to take the screw, kind of get a little groove for it, and then screw it in, and then you can reverse it to screw it back out. If you don't have a power tool, you could possibly use a nail and just hammer the nail in, and then once you take that out, you can maybe hand screw something in to get a little bit of a bigger hole going. That's just something I like to do, is if a pot only has one drainage hole, I like to add some extra ones, just because root rot is something that I have lost way too many plants to. But now this pot is all ready for this guy to go into. So let me grab my soil. So here is my big tub of hand mixed soil. It is a combination of peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, and orchid bark, and I just make a big vat of it. And since this fiddle leaf fig is starting out with a good bit of dirt in the pot, I'm just going to pick that up and then backfill it with this, and then we'll take those propagations. They haven't rooted yet, but I'm just going to live on a prayer here and stick them in there anyways. But yeah, so let me show you really quick the ingredients that I use. I'll just put them up on the screen, and then we can get right into moving the fiddle leaf fig into this big pot and then taking some cuttings. Okay, it's getting a little windy, which is unfortunate, but we are ready to basically just hoist this up and move it over here. Comparing though the height of these two and where the soil comes to, I am going to add some in for like a base layer before we make the switch. Okay, so we have a solid base in here now, so I'm just gonna, I'm scared, I am afraid of this, but we're just gonna pick it up and move it over. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, wow. Ooh, let me scoot this over. And this we're saving to put the monstera in here in a second. Okay, so that's about the height I wanted it to be at. Now the backfilling is going to be the tough part, because we don't want to create a gap of death, which is where there's space between where the plant is and where the edge of the container is, and then the water just goes through that, and you think, oh, it's draining, so it's had enough water, but really it's just going through that gap, and that's not what we want. All right, how's this? So I'm just using a little cup here to scoop some dirt, and we're just gonna start filling her up. And then the reason I haven't put the cuttings in yet is because since they have such minimal roots, I'm just gonna burrow a hole into the soil when they're ready to go in. And you may be wondering why I didn't break up kind of just the block that I had when I moved it over. And that's because, I mean, I'll massage it a little with my hands to kind of loosen up the roots, but this, you know, plant is the only healthy portion of the fiddle fig that I have, and I didn't want to risk, you know, messing it up and shocking the roots by pulling them apart when it's already a healthy system, and I figured the new soil can just mix in nicely. This soil with the fiddle fig that is already in there has honestly been some of my only experience with soil where there's not like a big issue with like root rot or getting dry too fast or staying wet too long. Like I genuinely feel like I have a golden ratio with this mixture that works perfectly for this plant. Even after leaving it in my old apartment, long after I took the rest because like I said, I couldn't fit it in my car. It without water for a month, it was still doing shockingly well. The thing about fiddle figs is they're definitely high maintenance at first, but then once they become kind of like a tree like this, then they become a lot easier to take care of. The main thing is just make sure it's getting enough light but not too much, and just let the soil dry out before you water it. But all of the like leaf sensitivity and, you know, once you have basically like a full tree, it kind of becomes more self-sustaining and it's a little easier to work with. So now I'm just massaging. I wish you could see better. I'm a little too high up, but I'm just massaging to mix the dirt together to make sure there's not any gapping between the roots, and that there's nice room for the roots to grow in all directions, should they feel so inclined. Ugh. Alright, so that is one heavy plant right there, and I'm going to go get the propagation, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I got the propagation. I actually took a whole lunch break, but this is why this is in such a bad shape right now, because the plant in the pot itself is fine. It's just the half that I had to cut off to get it to fit in my car. I guess just plunging it in a bowl of water wasn't exactly what it needed to keep going. So I'm going to try to find the healthiest leaves I can on this and cut it so that we'll have some things to put in the bottom here, and it's going to look ridiculous, but then once it starts growing, I'm hoping it can kind of have a bushy look, because as you can see, all the leaves on the bottom half of this have fallen. So I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but it actually looks like on the bottom of this, you can start to see some nodes that are producing some roots. So I might keep these bottom leaves, even though they're not looking the healthiest. I'm going to take this one off just because we don't want it to rot if it's sitting too low in the soil. R.I.P. This breaks my heart. And then I'm going to cut So as you can see, when I cut, a leaf fell off up there because I cut as soon as it stops getting healthy. There's a stretch of the leaves where they're just like literally hanging on by a thread. But these, while they're not in the best shape, you can see it's got those miscolored veins, and it's droopy. But these can come back, especially, you know, even if these leaves don't ever get super healthy, the branch itself is still healthy enough to produce, windy. The branch itself is still healthy enough to produce some potential new growth. So since it has the tiniest little buds of leaves growing, I'm going to take this stick and just form a hole in here where I think it'll go nicely. Okay. And we're just gonna let it find its home right in there. And I know it looks kind of silly, But I'm going to do an update video on all 3 of the plants that I'm treating today, and we can see how well my treatment is working. And then, you know, these medium leaves here, really weak, really falling apart, but at the top it starts to get semi-healthy again. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut below this node here so it has enough room to breathe and the leaves aren't going to be in the soil and get infected. With the hopes that some new growth will come along. So same thing again, I'm going to create a little hole. I think right here is good for it. Okay. And we're just going to pop it right in there. This one doesn't have any roots growing on it, so we can also just let this be a little experiment of, does propagating without first letting it be in water for a while actually work? Okay, so here we have the finished product of plant number 1. We've got some lower growth growing around, and then you can't even see it out of the frame, but the top half, which is actually doing still really well in their new soil, and it has improved drainage holes on the, I don't know where I left off. I just got super distracted by something, but basically this pot now has a lot of improved drainage holes on it, which was the big issue last time of it not being able to drain through all the way. And we have salvaged as many of the healthy leaves from this plant as we could. And yeah, I will update in a few weeks, months maybe, and we can see if my attempt to save this dying baby has actually worked. So now we're going to move on to the monstera, which is in equally as rough shape. Okay, while we wait for this gust of wind to pass so that these will get out of our way, I'm going to talk about what the plan is for this next plant. So the pot that we just took the fiddle leaf fig out of is now free and available to be used for another plant. This pot I've never had any drainage issues with. It is ready to go as is. The only thing wrong with the monstera is that its pot is too small and it's had a couple broken leaves, and I want to be able to use this cocoa coir pole to try, or maybe moss pole, I don't know, coconut moss pole, to be able to support it so that it's not tipping over, and also to try to guide the growth so it's not just jetting out, because that's a downside of working with monsteras. So I'm going to go ahead and take this pot out, and first placement for the time being, I'm just going to put that in there and scoot it out of the way. Okay, so that's nice. So we have a nice big pot here, lots of drainage holes, and we're just going to start filling it up with a base layer of the soil. Alright, so I have it filled up to about here. So now we're going to try to move in without too much chaos. Okay, so the moss pole is evidently the only thing that's able to come out. Ooh, that didn't sound good. Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, we've got quite the root system in the bottom there. Now we've got some room for the wings to spread. So we need a good bit more soil in there just to keep everything supported, so I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of that. Okay, so I have it filled up now. It's really starting to get windy, so I'm going to try to wrap this up as soon as I can. I'm going to take this moss pole and I'm going to put it right down in the middle. And then both of these are kind of leaning in opposite directions, so this moss pole acts as a nice center structure that's keeping both of them upright. But we need to add just a little bit more soil to keep everything leveled out. And then this one should be good to go, apart from some trimmings we need to make on the broken leaves. So for instance, this one, that is doing nobody any good. So I'm just going to do that so that it doesn't impede the growth, it's not in the way of anything. And then any other leaves that seem beyond repair. This one has a little crack and dent in it, but overall it looks fine. This one has, again, some of that, because it took several tumbles in the process of when it was in that pot that it was too light for. Excuse me, too heavy for. So apart from adding some more soil on top of this one, we are good to go. And as you can see, it's not tipping over anymore. It's in a structured growth pattern, and it's in enough soil so that the roots can grow a little bit more. So moving on to our last plant, which is this coffee plant here. This one's definitely in the worst shape out of all of them, so we're just going to do a straight prune and propagate, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so the last one that is in need of some help is this arabica coffee plant. The reason that she kind of kicked the bucket was because she needs a lot more water than all my other plants, and honestly just during all of our travel related to the wedding and everything, she has not been able to thrive. So what I'm going to do is just take the healthiest bits I can find, obviously not the ones with literal potato chips for leaves, and propagate them in this little glass of water. And like I said, when I do that update video, I will repot that into something, and we can kind of see how, if any / all of these plants have been able to rebound, and then you can learn what not to do in order to keep them from getting here. So starting off strong, we have this tiny little leaflet right here. It's very small. The new growth on it is kind of burnt, so that's not what you like to see. But I'm just going to give it a low cut, and then I'm going to pluck off the leaves that are not healthy, and pinch off that top growth because it's not healthy either. Alright, number one. And then off the top here, there's a pretty distinct line where it stops being healthy. This is about the last unhealthy leaf, and then the rest on top of here are still looking really good. So there's some nodes under there, and that's where the new root will come from. That's the thing with any propagation, just make sure there's a node, otherwise it will all be for nothing. I remember in the early stages of plant parenthood, I thought that if you could just put a leaf in water and it would grow. How wrong I was. Right, then we have some unhealthy leaves that we're going to take off the bottom, and then we're going to pinch those top leaves off that are already dead, and then boom, perfectly healthy little sprout. And this might give, because currently this kind of has like a tall look, when we redo it with the new propagations, it might kind of look a little more bushy, which I think could be really cute. We can just call this like spring cleaning for my plants, and we're just purging out all the bad. I will say I would like to have a quick moment of silence for all of my plants that didn't even remotely survive the move. Gone but never forgotten. So here we have another one, and I'm just going to clip off that bottom part, and there's some nodes under some healthy growth. So I'm just going to pick off the rest of these, and then we'll see what we're left with. Okay, so as you can see, after we cut off all the healthy stuff, this is what we're left with. A bunch of dead leaves and twigs. So that's a shame, but I think we were able to save a good bit. Also, this just looks so like appetizing to me. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why, I don't know. I like putting them together like this, because honestly I can put this in the middle of my table and have it be like a little bouquet of flowers, except it's a bouquet of propagations. Except now it's falling all over the place. Okay, so we have our little bouquet. I fixed it, it was falling apart. But yeah, this is really sad. I really don't see anything coming from this, even if we were to keep watering it, because once you take off all the dead leaves, it's just twigs. But I think we did the right thing by trying to save as much of it as we can. And yeah, that's really all I have. I'm looking forward to doing an update video on these to see if my attempts to save them worked. But in the meantime, I am just really happy to be back in the swing of things and hopefully be putting out some more videos with some more regularity. But until the next one, I hope that you are doing well and taking care of yourself. And before the wind and the airplane and everything just goes too crazy, I will wish you a good day.